makers. Today we're going to learn how to make bubble wands in Tinkercad. So here's an example of 3 simple bubble wands that I've created already. You'll notice that they're made up of the wand, a holder, and then the bubble part. So to do this, I'm going to go back to my Tinkercad base and I'm going to create a new design. The first thing I want you to do when you create a new design is rename it. This is Tinkercad's version of Untitled Document. So you're going to put your name. So I'm going to put my name and then your project. Okay, so I put Mrs. Nedgia Bubble Wand. Okay, so this is your work plane, and here's where you find your tools where you can drag things out. A couple quick things: you can use your view cube to navigate yourself around the work plane. If you get lost, just go back home and that will bring you here. I'm using a mouse so I can zoom in using my scroll button and zoom out. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to drag in a box tool. And when we drag in that box tool, you'll notice it has very sharp edges. So we're going to change the radius to 0.5. Notice how hard it is to drag it to get it exactly to a number. So you could always type it in here. So we're going to kind of round it a little bit so it's not so short. We're also going to change our steps to 20. And we could change our dimensions here, but I would prefer that you change your dimensions on your actual box. Notice if this gets in the way, just minimize it. Okay, so I'm going to make this into a long, skinny rectangle. So I'm just going to kind of drag it, and I'm close to the measurements I want here. Notice I'm in millimeters, not inches, and I'm going to make this measurement 75 millimeters. I'm going to make this measurement 5 millimeters. Notice I'm hitting the enter key after I do that. And then that will give me a really tall, skinny rectangle. I need to change the height. I'm going to click. Notice when I click on my object, these are the edges. This is the height, the middle one. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to make it 2.5 millimeters tall. Okay, so now I have my wand. Let's zoom in on it. We'll see that it has kind of rounded edges, so they're not super sharp. I could have rounded them more, but this is fine for our evil purposes. I'm going to drag in another box, and this time I'm going to create the holder part. I'm going to do the same thing with this box. I'm going to make the radius 0.5, and I'm going to make my steps 20. Okay, and it's rounded things off a little bit. So the size for this is going to be 15 by 15 by 2.5. So if I click on this box, oops, that's in the way. I can click on this edge and it tells me that it's 20 by 20. So I'm going to click in one and I'm going to make that 15. I can hit the tab key and that will bring me to the other one, and I'm going to make that 15 and hit the enter key. Okay, it's way too tall. I want to make it the same height that I made my skinny rectangle. So I'm going to click on the height and I'm going to make that 2.5. Okay, so now if you'd like, you could cut out your initial. So I'm going to go down to the text tool and drag that out. Okay, in the text tool, I don't want it to say text. I want it to have the letter M. So I could do a lowercase or an uppercase. Okay, right now it's way too big and I'm going to cut it out of that, so I'm going to have to make it smaller. So if I just click and drag, I can make a really skinny or a really fat M. If I want to keep it looking exactly the way it is, I'm going to hold down the shift key and click and drag. Okay, and my size for this, I want it to be no more than, let's say, 10. So I'm going to change this one to 10, and I'll leave this. Okay, I'm going to click on it. You'll notice that you can make things a solid or a hole. We're going to make this a hole. Since it's a hole, Doesn't matter how big it is. I'm going to make it big. And I'm going to kind of eyeball it and try to get it in the middle. But it's hard to get things exactly in the middle. So let's use the Align tool. If I click and drag around these two things, they're both selected. And here's the Align tool. I want to put it in the center this direction and this direction. Okay, it's centered now. So now I want to cut that hole out of my handle. So again, let's click and drag, and we're going to group them. It might take a moment, but when we group a hole and a solid, it's going to give us a hole. Okay, I'm just going to click on that, let it do its job for a moment. Because I'm impatient. There we go. Okay, so now if I look at it, I can see through it. So I have that hole. Okay, so let's drag our handle over here. Notice, not only am I going to make it touch, but I'm going to make it, oops, undo. I'm going to make it overlap. So I'm just dragging. By the way, you can use the arrow keys too. So I'm going to place it in such a way that it's not only touching, but it's overlapping. And then I want to center these again. So if I click and drag around these, or if I click on one object, hold the shift key down and click on the other, I'll have them both selected. And let's align them. This time, we're only aligning them in this direction. Okay, so now they're lined up. All right, let's group those. When things are grouped, they're one object. Okay, so now we need to create the bubble part. So you have a couple options. You could use the scribble tool, okay, and create an object that you would like to scribble. If you want to make it thicker, you might have to go over it a couple times. When you have your object, you can click on Done, and here's your object. So that could be your object. Of course, you're going to want to size it so that it works with your wand. So let me just zoom out a little bit. This one might be okay. Again, I'm going to want to overlap it, group it, and bring that height down to 2.5. Okay, that's one option. Another option is I have a cool website that you can go to. The site is svgrepo.com. And on this website, I can find free vector images. Okay, I can save SVGs, which is what I can import into Tinkercad. So I could just do a quick search, and I'm going to say, let's do a search on flower, and let's see what comes back. Now I'm looking something with an outline and a lot of white space in it as well. The white space is where the bubble juice will go and where we're going to blow our bubbles from. So any of these would work well. I'm definitely not going to choose a color one, but I think I'm going to choose this one. So I'm going to right click. Remember, on a Chromebook, when you right click, you do a peace sign with 2 fingers and tap the touchpad with those 2 fingers. You're going to choose Save Image As. And I already have a flower 4, so let's save this as flower 6. Okay, it's been saved, and now I can go back to Tinkercad, and I'm going to import that SVG. You can import SVGs, but you can't import PNGs. So let's choose our file and click on Open and import that. Okay, I should have been a little bit more careful. I think my size was really big. So it's going to take a little long. Oh yeah, my size is really big. So I'm going to select it. Holding down the shift key, I'm going to make it smaller. And smaller. Okay, that kind of looks like a decent size. Let's see, my size is 55. Let's kind of keep it around, if we can, closer to 40 or 45. Okay, so now I've got my bubble part of my bubble wand. Okay, I can kind of set it up so that I get it in the right place, but let's just check on our height because we want our height to be the same at 2.5. Okay, so we're going to align it again. I'm going to rotate my screen and I'm going to select my portions, my different pieces, and I'm going to say align them in this direction. Okay, it looks pretty good to me and everything's selected, so I can hit the group. And it might take a moment to group it. But there it is. Okay, so here's my bubble wand. And when I put it in the bubble juice and I blow, it's going to make bubbles out of anywhere where there's a space. So you are going to create two different bubble wands. You can create one by using an SVG file from SVG repo. You could create your own. And if you just wanted to create a very simple one, I'm going to drag out a cylinder, holding the shift key down, make it bigger. I'm going to duplicate that. And now I have two of them. Oops, undo. I should have two. Oh, it didn't duplicate. So let's duplicate. And now I should have two of them. I'm going to make the second one into a hole. I'm going to make it smaller and I'm going to make it really tall because it's a hole. It doesn't matter how big it is. So let's select these and let's align them. And if I wanted to make just a very simple bubble wand, I could do it like this. And of course, I'm going to change my height down to 2.5. Okay, and then I could create another bubble handle and bubble holder, or let me show you a trick. I'm going to select this guy. I'm going to ungroup them. I'm going to select just this, and I'm going to Control C, Control V, or use a duplicate. And now I've got a, oops, undo. Now I've got a second one, and I could make my second bubble wand. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is, you know how bubble wands have those little ridges on them, the ones that you buy or get as a prize from a birthday party? So we're going to see if we can replicate one of those. So I'm going to delete this because I'm not going to use it. And in my shapes library, I'm going to search for something called tube joint. Okay, and I'm going to drag that out. Okay, I'm going to hold down the shift key and make it bigger. Okay, let's take a look at what we can do with this. We could change the inner radius. We could change the size. Okay, we could change the outer radius. Okay, we could make the tongs give us more of those or less of them. And we can change the tongue angle. Okay, so since we've done that, and let's zoom in and bring this down. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to change my height to 2.5. And then if I want to have the ridges on top of something, I could create that cylinder like I did before, or I could drag something out like the ring. Okay, I'm going to drag and make sure that these guys are centered. So I'm going to align them again. Align, align. Okay, I'm going to make this bigger so that it okay, so that I want it to be the same size. So let's see what size this is. Let's control the size of the red one. We're going to make that 35. We're going to make this 35. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with the orange one. Oops, undo. Let me click off it and drag it. Okay, that's 35, that's 35. Let's see if we could change the size of this guy. So we're going to make this one 35. We're going to make this one 35. And now they're the same size. We're going to put this on top of this, and we're going to drag this height down to 2 so that we can see those little ridges on the top. Okay, and we're going to choose Maybe we'll make it a little bit smaller. Let's make it 1.75. Okay, and now we're just going to make sure that everything is aligned for a second time. And we're going to drag our handle and make sure that not only is it touching, but it's overlapping. And let's center that. And we have everything selected, so we're going to group it. And now I will have a traditional looking bubble wand. Okay, you can create 2 different bubble wands. You'll turn them into me, and I will print them, and we will be testing them next week.